Good morning.
Good morning. It is March 26th, the last Sunday in March 2023. We're delighted that you're joining us. Our topic today is No Approval Needed. And so I'm going to begin with an opening prayer. So join me, if you would, by going within. We close our eyes to go to that essential part of us, the part of us that is spirit, that is connected with spirit, connected with the power, the presence, and the love of God. We know the truth of ourselves as human beings is a very complicated one emotionally and a very simple one spiritually. Spiritually, we are simply love and loved. As a human being, we have a complex array of emotions and needs, and so we declare today that we are approved by God. We are a part of all that is and made of the same essence and substance as God. And so we need no approval. We are simply ever evolving spirit. We give thanks for this knowing. And together we say, and so it is. And I want to start by reading a quote from Ernest Holmes, our founder of Centers for Spiritual Living. And this is from a book he wrote called Richer Living. And he says, the road to self-discovery often calls for the clearing away of the underbrush of ignorance, fear, superstition, and a sense of isolation, which has made us feel that we were unworthy, unheld, and lost. In the divine providence of good, salvation is unnecessary, but self-discovery is essential. We do not save that which was lost. We merely discover that which needs to be found. End of quote.
That's beautiful.
This is so full of important information. I'm going to be breaking it down and referring to it. But, the title of our talk is No Approval Needed. And, this whole month we've been talking about being clear about who we are, being self-revealing, being authentic, being our authentic selves. And we know when we do that, that often we're not going to get approval from the outside world. And this title is about we don't need approval from the outside world. We do need approval from our inside world. We do need self-approval. And I know that when I think my family of origin didn't know when I left my religion because I was away from home and I just didn't believe it anymore. But when I adopted a new religion, which was called religious science at that time, when I adopted a new, really profound religion for me, I got a lot of disapproval because it was considered, weird, strange, weird teaching compared to one that was 2,000 years old. So I did get disapproval, and that can be very frustrating from when you're disapproved of by your loved ones, and it can be very hurtful. And we all experience it because they never approve of us totally. Oh, doggone it! I was going to get that quote from Khalil Gibran, when he has a quote about children, and he says, "Your children are not your children. They are the slings and arrow of life's longing for itself."
You don't need to quote it.
And you will never know all they know, for they are the future. They are the future that you will never get to visit. And yet, they're perfectly fine the way they are. So, but we all want approval from our parents, from our loved ones, and yet we really have to give up the need for any outside approval when we know that we're on our path. But it's a different matter to get your own approval. So you just let me know when you want to jump in here, okay? Because sometimes I get going on a theme and he doesn't get a chance to speak up. So, you have something to say?
No.
So we have to clear away the underbrush of ignorance, fear, superstition, and a sense of isolation. One of the things I always considered this teaching half psychology, half spirituality, because you really do a lot of trying to understand exactly who you are and what is going on with you. Because here you're told by this church that God is in you, that the Spirit of God is in you. Of course, that's in the New Testament also. But most people don't buy it, who are Christians, that it's really in them. And so you have to clear away, well, especially all this good and bad stuff, because you're taught as a child that you were born a sinner.
Original sin.
And
No,
originally you had nothing
yeah,
to do with it, but
yeah.
you were born a sinner. And that, I was taught that all human beings sin and all are sinners. And so that's a sense of inherent badness about you. So all of us can't help it. We're just evil little humans. So that doesn't make you feel very good about yourself. And we all have behaviors and we've done mistaken things, but that doesn't mean that we're inherently evil. So we need to sort through all that. I think we need to sort through our internal psychology. And it's a process. And how can you be validly who you are, authentically who you are, if you're not even clear who you are? And I find that self-approval is very important. And I find that in my dreams I will often be criticizing myself and feeling like I haven't done enough right and I've done things wrong. And I woke up this morning actually and said, I love myself. Myself needs loving right now. I love myself the way I am, and still I want to grow. That's the song, actually, we have to share with you afterwards. You wanted to say something, Bob?
Yeah, I think we live with conflicting beliefs, simultaneously opposing beliefs. We believe on the one hand that God in us, is us, as us, works through us, and we can do anything, and we are privileged to be here, and this is an honor, and we're extraordinary, and our reach is far greater than we could have imagined. We also believe that we're worthless, hopeless, fail on a regular basis, and can do nothing right. And we're also sure when somebody yells the word stupid, we turn around because it's got to be us. And so it's interesting to see the simultaneously existing beliefs that are in conflict with one another. And the question really is the old story about the Native Americans that I'm sure you've heard, where the grandfather says to the son, there's two wolves, and the one wolf will devour you in a heartbeat, and the other wolf is kind and loving. And the son says, which one am I? And the father or grandfather says, whichever one you feed. And we feed that self-loathing, self-hate, that dislike of ourselves. We feed that by the conditions around us. So when something goes bad, we very quickly jump into the position of it must be me. What did I do wrong? Why aren't I any good? And when something goes good, we think, yeah, that's me. I did that. That's wonderful. That's God in me. And so, but I think we don't realize how influenced we are by the conditions around us to not take an honest look at ourselves, but to look from a point of view of what we've been taught. And so, if what you were taught was that you weren't even the benefactor of having been born into unoriginal sin, it was original sin. I mean, it was worse than that. It was nothing worse than being born into something that's bad. That your inherent badness is what you can count on. And then watch the news, and you'll hear even more of that. The badness going on around us, and then the deficits, and by the time you get done, it's really, you can very easily give in to the idea that you and everyone else is really not worth much in the world. But it's not the only belief you have. So what we're talking about today is which one of those are you feeding, and how did you come to feed it?
That's good. Also, we have something that we call in our teaching metaphysical guilt, because we believe that we create our own experience based on what we've been thinking, believing, and doing, I guess, but mostly what we think and expect and believe, we create our own experience. So when something happens to us that we might want to call bad or unpleasant,
What's wrong
we
with
will
that?
go, how did I create this? What have I been believing? What do I need to correct? And we call it metaphysical guilt because you can suddenly feel guilty about, how did I do this to myself? Do you want to share your experience?
But I
about
want to
this
spend a
week?
minute with that one. You decide you're going to go to California if you don't live there and you want to visit, and you decide to buy a first class ticket there because you want to sit in the best of all the seats and you want to be able to have a nice experience. You signed up for that experience. You said yes to that experience. You didn't know that you also said yes to a 3-hour wait at the airport. You didn't know you said yes to the air turbulence. You didn't know that you said yes to not much food or very bad food or people that are cantankerous or smell bad. You didn't know you signed up for any of that, but you did. So when we say it's in your consciousness, it means that when you choose a path, everything on the path is also part of your choice, even when you don't know that it's there. And that's an important piece. So when you want to blame yourself for a bad I never should have done this, what's wrong with me? Actually, you can't help some of the things that are going to happen on the path that you choose. Just know that you chose it. And why that's important is then you can choose how you're going to deal with it. If you're a victim of these things happen, I can't help it, oh my God, what's wrong with me? That position doesn't allow you to say, well, how can I make this work?
So that's the wrong question. What's wrong with me?
Yes, absolutely the
That
wrong
is
question.
the wrong question.
You could ask, what's right with me? What can I do with what's right with
Exactly.
me? I remember reading about Leo Biscaglia, who was the Dr. Love, they used to call him, I think.
He was a professor at college.
Yeah, and he got on an airplane and he said, let's have a party. And before long, they were bringing out food that they had that they wouldn't normally share, and he was having people sing and dance, and they were having a wonderful time. His choice was, let's make this event an event worth living for and living through and living in, as opposed to we'll start having a life once we get off the airplane. And that was really important. I want to share a short an experience. Nothing for me is more valuable than the experiences we have in life that we learn from. And I had one of those. I work in a place. In order to qualify to be in this place, you have to be a danger to yourself or someone else.
The patients, not the
Yeah,
workers.
yeah, well, the staff sometimes too. Yeah, yeah. All right, so bring that up. Yeah. So, but so I work in what's called a what do they call it? God, I'm blocking it. What we call it now.
You want the name of the place or
No,
the
no, no,
unit?
no. I can't name the place, and I
Okay.
don't want to do that. But anyway, it is it is stabilization. It's called mental health stabilization unit, meaning that when people are so unstable that they're a danger to themselves or someone else, they then come there. So imagine I'm sitting at a table where there's 4 seats. The seats are welded to the table, so you can't push them away or pick them up and throw them. And I'm sitting at one of those chairs, and I have all of my 120 pencils, colored pencils out, and I have my pencil sharpener out, and I'm inviting my clients.
Because you're the art therapist.
I'm the art therapist, and I invite the clients to come sit with me. And the clients that come sit with me are often the most disturbed, the most upset, the most difficult. And I love that I get to do that. And I love that I get to sit there and watch somebody who is hallucinating and delusional and even semi-dangerous start to color and do a good job, and I can start talking to them, and before long they're talking to me, and this is marvelous work.
It's the best therapy they get there.
Yeah, it is. Well, don't say
because
that.
it's a stabilization
Yeah,
unit. It's not a therapy
not a place
unit.
for therapy. So I'm kind of the therapist in residence, and so I'm doing my job at 7:30 in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning. Happened to I get there at 7:30, and I'm working. So this is good. I'm professional. I'm skilled. I'm trained. I'm ready. This is what I do. Well, one of the clients sitting across from me started using really obscene, sexually explicit language in front of you. I said, "Please stop." And he immediately cleared the table, everything on it with one arm, and then jumped up, reached over, hit me in the face, and tried literally to assault me from there on. Here's what's interesting. Of course, I wasn't prepared for that, but I should be. And that was my internal, you should be ready for this.
And he couldn't get out.
And I couldn't get out.
The chair wouldn't move.
So here's what's true. There's 14 other clients, all of whom are there dealing with their stuff or not dealing with their stuff, pacing. And what I know is that I'm sitting there pretty much by myself. I'm alone. I'm alone in that I'm the one trying to manage all of this, but basically, except for the people sitting at the table, there's nobody else around. They're pacing, they're walking, they're wandering, and nothing's going on. I feel alone. That's my assessment of my condition. I'm in charge. I've got to do what I can do. When this man hit me in the face and I jumped back and tried to get some safety, all of a sudden, 3 or 4 of the clients who I know are in worse repair than the person sitting at the table were there restraining and protecting and helping. And then some of the clients who rarely ever get out of their chairs were up picking up all the pencils that were on the floor and bringing them back for me. And I thought, well, my assessment was wrong, first off, that I'm by myself alone and nobody sees and nobody cares. That's an easy one to make. And the staff were all back in the staff area where they were watching, but they weren't. It took them a while to get over and out to where I was to help protect me. So in fact, I was actually saved by the clients who were, quote, dangerous to everyone around. And then the staff came in and things got better. But the interesting thing was my assessment of the condition of aloneness was inaccurate. The assessment that I had of the value that I contribute was questionable, but not when I saw what actually happened. Then afterwards, this is interesting too, I thought, what should I have done? What could I have done to have stopped this? Was this my fault? And immediately it's easy for us to move into self-blame. Why didn't I stop this? Why didn't I see this ahead of time? What was going on here? What should I have done? And then part of the procedure for a situation like this is as soon as that's all over with, you have to write an incident report, and you have to go get a drug test to make sure that you're not doing drugs. I thought, my God, I've just been hit in the face, and I have to do a drug test. And immediately shame shows up, even though I don't do drugs, mostly because I thought I should be doing drugs. But but the interesting thing is you go back and forth with, what did I do wrong? I'm alone. This isn't fair. This isn't right. How did I get it? Should I be doing this kind of work? Why am I doing this? At the same time that I chose this 60 years ago, and I chose it because it was a calling that I felt was really an important one. But you vacillate with that. You go back and forth, and it's so easy to make yourself wrong. It's so easy to put yourself down. It's so easy to alienate yourself even when you're doing your best work.
You know, you're usually really good at picking up cues
Yeah.
and de-escalating someone
Yeah.
who's violent. So you could have been saying, why didn't I
Why didn't I
pick
get
up
it?
the cues earlier?
Yeah, and the most interesting thing is that this whole situation happened at a table where I have 120 color pencils that I show and kind of get everybody involved in coloring. And this is the only day I've ever forgotten to bring my pencils. And I had to call Judith and say, Judith, would you please bring my pencils in? And you brought
That's
them in.
interesting,
I
yeah.
set them up on the table, and 20 minutes later, I'm being assaulted. So I'm leaving my pencils at home. But you color with your fingers. But why I'm sharing this with you is that, first off, I had no idea the amount of compassion, the amount of caring, the amount of alertness, the amount of awareness that the people around me have.
The
that
patience,
that I could
patience.
easily discount, not notice, or not value.
Mm-hmm.
And I would do the same thing with myself if I don't give it a second thought.
Mm-hmm.
And so immediately, of course, everybody came out, how are you? I said, well, I took it on the chin, but I'm good. And but the bottom line is, you have to take a look at what is my relationship here with me and what I do, and what is my relationship with the people. And they all have value. They all have contribution to make, even in their worst situation. And I can't imagine things being a lot worse than they are in the circumstance where I work. And I can't imagine a more positive outcome, a more loving, kind outcome. And I can see it even amongst the clients who rarely ever talk, them wanting to be sure that I was okay. I'm not anonymous. You're not anonymous.
You're not alone.
Yeah, and we often treat ourselves without meaning to as if we are alone or we are anonymous. We often discount our own value because there's no light on it. There's no emphasis on it. There's no attention being given to it, either by us or by anyone else. And in some cases, disapproval. Like, why do you do that, Bob? That's crazy. Why don't you get a real job? Or why don't you do something that's good for people other than, you hear all these negative things and you think, oh, maybe they're right. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's easy, as I say, when something bad happens, to say, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
And so we really must examine that and get to the self-approval part. You know, you cannot expect and cannot depend upon approval from other people, even if they do approve of you. They're busy with their own lives. They're not going to come and tell you what a good person you are or how much good you've done. So self-approval is very important. Self-love is very important. You're not a perfect person. I'm not a perfect person. Bob is not a perfect person.
I would say we are perfect people, but we don't do perfectly.
We don't
Yeah,
always.
we're perfect examples of
perfect beings.
humanity. We're perfect examples of human beings being who human beings are. If that weren't true, when you go to the doctor would say, "What are you? I'm a human being." Oh, I didn't realize you don't look. Well, we are. And every cell of your body is a perfect example of human beingness. What we do with that, however, how we treat that, now that may not be consistent with that belief that we are perfect. Now, the other piece of that is that if you're doing your best and you do something wrong, you do something that isn't good, you do something that isn't right, you do something that's even bad, then that's not who you are. That's what you did. And you have to go back and say, what did I learn from that? How can I correct that? How can I do differently? I know people that 50 years after an incident where they were involved in doing something that wasn't good, they're still punishing themselves for it. And they're punishing the rest of the world by not allowing their good to be seen, by not allowing their good to be demonstrated in life. They're withholding their good in lieu of how bad they feel and having everyone else only see that bad.
I thought of Ernest Holmes, our founder, who he grew up in a family of 8 boys. And they all went off to college, most of them, rather, went off to college and one became a psychologist, one became a minister. Their mother had been a school teacher, and so they were all very educated. Most of them, a couple did not and became a farmer and things like that. But he left school at 8th grade and went off to Boston at about 18, I think, and went to oratory school. And he spent all of his time in the library reading. So he loved to read. I don't know what he didn't like about school, but he was the only one who didn't finish school. And while he was at oratory school, the teacher there's wife was a Christian Scientist. And he went to church with her, and she taught him some of the principles there. And he learned them about doing spiritual mind treatment and had terrific success with it, including with his own mother, healed her of her heart condition when she lived to be 90 or 92. But at any rate, he went off to California where one brother, Fenwick, was a minister, and he was the youth minister there. And so, he played baseball with them and things like that and put on a play for them. But, he was sort of the ne'er-do-well. He was the baby and sort of the one that wasn't really in a profession. And somebody gave him a job in Los Angeles at athletic equipment department for all the school regions. And there was nothing to do in this department. He sat and read. Nobody came in or out, so he must have, this part I read where he said, where you feel unheld and lost, unworthy, unheld, and lost. I thought, I bet he felt that way when he was doing that. But he was reading and studying the British metaphysician Thomas Troward's book, and he was so fascinated with it. The first thing he did was teach it. He kept talking about it because he was so excited about it, and so people asked him to teach a class. And the first class he taught was in a woman's home there in Los Angeles. Well, anyway, that was the start of a stellar rise in success, and the training that he went through to be an oratory person, because he was a great orator, he was a great speaker, and he attracted a huge following and started the Religious Science organization. So even someone who becomes very great can go through a dark period of feeling alone, ignorant, fearful, and a sense of isolation. But I think he always had a sense of self-worth and approved of what he was doing. He knew he was on his own unique path. And so we need to remember to do that for ourselves as well. It's very easy to be self-critical, and it's very easy not to get approval from the outside, right, especially your family. So if you're feeling that, just know that it's your job to know the truth of who you are, and it's your job to love yourself and approve of yourself, especially if you feel like you really are doing the best that you can under the conditions. Another part he says here, salvation is unnecessary. It's so nice to know we don't need to be saved from anything. We don't need to be saved from ourselves, from our true nature. Salvation is unnecessary, but self-discovery is essential. If you are this spiritual being having the same essence in you that is in the divine, what are you doing with it? And how is that going? Can you approve of yourself? That is essential. And you can even do that when your behavior may need some improvement, or your addictions may need some improvement, or so you can still love yourself and still approve of yourself?
I met a woman some time ago who had spent time in prison, was an alcoholic, and pretty much everything you could think of that could go wrong in her life that she could contribute to, she contributed to, so that she had a very, very, very miserable life, meaning that she didn't choose recovery. She didn't choose a lot of the things that people would choose for, and when she had a chance, she said no. So she smoked and she drank and she was nasty and she was angry and she was hostile, and most people didn't like her. And at one point she was getting ready to cross the street, and a young boy stepped out and was going to be hit by a car, and she grabbed the boy. She then slipped and she was hit by the car. I met her in the hospital as she was recovering, and she said, "I'm 80 years old and I finally know what my purpose is." And I said, "What's your purpose?" She said, to save a young man. And I thought that was really interesting. She said, I knew that my life had value, but I didn't know when I would find it, and I finally found it. You know, it's never too late to set the reset button. It's never too late to say, it's time for me to show and demonstrate and be my good. And if you can do that in any way, do that, because first off, we enjoy it and we need the practice. And secondly, if you're looking for approval, then without knowing it, very often you're coming from a place of self-disapproval.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we say, "I approve of me," we no longer are looking for approval, and we're actually then in the flow of approval.
Exactly.
Which is important.
So it's time for us
Yeah.
to close. You want to end with a closing prayer?
Yeah, sure. So we are together, so I won't say we'll come together. Let's just stay together here and collect our thoughts and know together. Here we know something that is important. We are exactly who we need to be, doing exactly what we need to be, allowing for the life that is unfolding to be as perfect as it is meant to be, and for us to embrace it fully. So we say yes to life. We say yes to the challenges. We say yes to the amazing beings that we are and the opportunities that are revealed to us. We say yes to life. We say yes to joy and to love. We say yes instead of no, and know that we are love, kindness, and joy in expression. Knowing this to be so, we say together, and so it is.
So it is. And before we end the recording, we do want to share our offertory. Oops.
Yes, for those of you that want to support us, because this is a ministry that actually is not a free ministry for us. It takes time and effort and expenses, and we do appreciate your support. And when you support us, you're not only supporting your own spirituality and the fundamentals of what we believe, we're also supporting people who come for the first time, in many cases, who so much need the support and encouragement that they can get here. So we thank you for being a part of a community that helps not just us and you, but people who also are just discovering and enjoying the need here.
So say with me, my investment today is made with the full realization that God is the source of my supply and returns it to me enriched and multiplied as I share it. And so you may share your offering by going to our website, CSL, which stands for Center for Spiritual Living, palmbeaches.org. And when you go to that website, there is a button at the top that says Ways to Donate. And so we appreciate your sharing with us. And so we're going to stop the recording now.